inspiring, writing, and publishing of this magnificent work of literature. May all who listen be rightly guided in their discernment by the divine source within. Introduction. Few realize that even at the present stage of civilization in this world, there are souls who, like the priests of the ancient temples, walk the earth and watch and guard the sacred fires that burn upon the altar of humanity. Purified ones they are, who have renounced the life of this sphere in order to guard and protect the flame, that spiritual principle in man, now hidden beneath the ruins of his fallen temple. As we think of the nations that are past, of Greece and Rome and the grandeur that was Egypt's, we sigh as we recall the story of their fall, and we watch the nations of today, not knowing which will be the next to draw its shroud around itself, and join the great ghostly fire of evils that are dead. But everywhere, even in the rise and fall of nations, we see through the haze of materiality, justice. Everywhere we see reward, not of man, but of the invincible one, the eternal flame. 8. A great hand reaches out from the unseen and regulates the affairs of man. It reaches out from that great spiritual flame which nourishes all created things, the never-dying fire that burns on the sacred altar of cosmos, the great fire which is the Spirit of God. If we turn again to the races now dead, we shall, if we look, find the cause of their destruction. The light had gone out. When the flame within the body is withdrawn, the body is dead. When the light was taken from the altar, the temple was no longer the dwelling place of a living God. Degeneracy, lust, and passion, hates and fears, crept into the souls of Greece and Rome, and black magic overshadowed Egypt. The light upon the altar grew weaker and weaker. The priests lost the word, the name of the flame. Little by little the flame flickered out, and as the last spark grew cold, a mighty nation died, buried beneath the dead ashes of its own spiritual fire. But the flame did not die. Like spirit of which it is the essence, it cannot die, because it is life, and life cannot cease to be. In some wilderness of land or sea it rested once again, and there rose a mighty nation around that flame. So history goes on through the ages. As long as a people true to the flame, it remains, but when they cease to nourish it with their lives, it goes on to other lands and other worlds. Those who worship this flame are now called heathens. Little do we realize that we are heathen ourselves until we are baptized with the Holy Spirit. 9. With the fire is light, and the children of the flame are the sons of light, even as God is light. There are those who have for ages labored with man to help him to kindle within himself this spark, which is his divine birthright. It is these who by their lives of self-sacrifice and service have awakened and tended his fire, and who for ages have studied to learn the mystery of contained, that they now call the initiates of the flame. For ages they have labored with mankind to help him to uncover the light within himself, and on the pages of history they have left their seal, the seal of the fire, unholy and unsettled labored with humanity, and now their lives are used as fairy stories to amuse people. But the time will yet come when the world shall know the work they did, and realize that our present civilization is raised upon the shoulders of the mighty demigods of the past. We stand as founders stood, with all our law, a fool no wiser than before, because we refused to take the truths they gave us, and the evidence of their experiences. Let us honor these sons of the flame, not by words, but by so living that their sacrifice shall not be in vain. They have shown us the way, they have led man to the gateway of the unknown, and there in their robes of glory passed behind the veil. Their lives were the key to their wisdom, as it must always be. They have gone, but in history they stand, milestones on the road of human progress. Let us watch these mighty ones, as they pass silently by. First, Orpheus, playing upon the seven-stringed lyre of his own being, the music of the spheres. Then 10, Hermes, the thrice greatest, with his emerald tablet of divine revelation. Through the shades of the past we dimly see Krishna, the illuminated, who on the battlefield of life taught man the mysteries of his own soul. Then we see the sublime Buddha, his yellow robe not half so glorious as the heart it covered, and our own dear master, the man Jesus, his head surrounded with a halo of golden flame, and his brow serene with the calm of mastery. Then Muhammad, Zoroaster, Confucius, Odin, and Moses, and others no less worthy passed by before the eyes of the student. They were the sons of flame. From the flame they came, and to the flame they have returned. To us they beckon, and bid us join them, and in our robes of self-earned glory to serve the flame they love. They were without creed or clan, they served but the one great ideal. From the same place they all came, and to the same place they have returned. There was no superiority there. Hand in hand they labor for humanity. Each loves the other, for the power that has made them masters has shown them the brotherhood of all life. In the pages that follow we will try to show this great thread, the spiritual thread, the thread of living fire that wins in and out through all religions and binds them together with a mutual ideal and mutual needs. In the story of the Grail and the legends of King Arthur we find the thread wound around the table of the king and the temple of Mount Salvat. This same thread of life that passes through the roses of the Rosicrucians, winds among the petals of the lotus, and among the temple pillars of Luxor. There is but 11, one religion in all the world, and that is the worship of God, the spiritual flame of the universe. Under many names he is known in all lands, but as Aiswari or Ammon or God, he is the same, the creator of the universe, and fire is his universal symbol. We are the flame-born sons of God, thrown out as sparks from the wheels of the infinite. Around this flame we have built forms which have hidden our light, but as students we are increasing this light by love and service, until it shall again proclaim us sons of the eternal. Within us burns that flame, and before its altar the lower man stands, a faithful servant of the higher. When he serves the flame he grows, and the light grows until he takes his place with the true initiates of the universe, those who have given all to the infinite, in the name of the flame within. Let us find this flame and also serve it. realizing that it is in all created things.
Got
We are
it.
one because all are part of that eternal flame, the fire of spirit, the life and power of the universe. Upon the altar of this flame, to the true creator of this book, the writer offers it, and dedicates it to the one fire which blazes forth from God, and is now hidden within each living thing.
This ain't no
Forward,
place
the greatest
for
of mystery
you.
schools. The world is the school
Excuse
of
me.
God.
Buzz
Our being in
off.
school does not make us learn, but within that school is the opportunity for all learning. It has its grades and its classes, its sciences and its arts, and admission to it is the birthright of man. Its graduates are its students, its pupils are all created. Its examples are nature, and its rules are God's laws. Those who would go into the greater colleges and universities must first, day by day, and year by year, work through the common school of life, and present to their new teachers the diplomas they have won, upon which is written the name that none may read save those who have received it. The hours may seem long, and the teachers cruel, but each of us must walk that path, and the only ones ready to go onward are those who have passed through the gateway of experience. Chapter 1. The fire upon the altar. As far back as our history goes, we find that fire has played an important part in the religious ceremonial of the human race. In practically every religion we find the sacred altar fires, which were guarded by the priests and vestals with greater care than their own lives. In the Bible we find many references made to the sacred fires, which were used as one form of devotion by the ancient Israelites. The altar of burnt offerings is as old as the human race, and dates from the time when the first man, lifting himself out of the mists of ancient Lemuria, first saw the sun, the great fire spirit of the universe. Among the followers of Zoroaster, the Persian initiate, fire has been used for centuries in honor of the great fire god, Horus, who is said by them to have created the universe. There are two paths or divisions of humanity whose history is closely related to that of the Buddhist teachings. They embody the doctrines of fire and water, the two opposites of
Always
nature.
suspected
Those who
they'd
follow
look
the path
better
of
that
faith or
way.
the heart use water, and are known as the sons of Seth, while those who follow the path of the mind and action are the children of God, who is the son of Samael, a spirit of fire. Today we find the latter among the alchemists, the hermetic philosophers, the logicians, and the Freemasons. It is well for us to understand that we ourselves are the cube altar upon which and in which burns the altar fire. For many centuries the initiate of fire has been nourishing and guarding the spiritual flame within himself. The priests watch day and night the altar fires of Vesta's temple. The ever-burning lamp of the
Not
alchemist,
bad.
which having burned thousands of years without fuel in the passage of time, is but the symbol of his same spiritual fire within himself. In the picture we see the ever-burning lamp, which was carried by the initiate in his wandering. It represents the spinal column of man, at the top of which is flickering a little blue and red flame. As the lamp of the ancients was fed and kept burning by the purest of olive oil, so man is transmitting within himself and cleansing in the lava of purification the life essences, which, when turned upward, provide fuel for the ever-burning lamp within himself. Upon the altars of the ancients were offered sacrifices of their gods. The ancient Hierophant offered up sacrifices of
You're a
spices and
regular
incense.
artist,
The Masonic brother of
aren't
today
you?
still has among his symbols the incense burner or censer, but few of the brothers recognize themselves in this symbol. The ancients symbolized under such things as this the development of the individual, and as the tiny spark burning among the incense cubes slowly consumes all, so the spiritual flame within the student is slowly burning away and transmuting the base metals and properties within himself, and offering up the essence thereof as the smoke upon the altar of divinity. It is said that King Solomon, when he completed his temple, offered bulls as a sacrifice to the Lord, by burning them upon the temple altar. Those who believe in a harmless
think
life
they're
wonder
done
why
out
so
there?
many references are made in the
We
Bible
don't
to
want any
animal
trouble.
sacrifice. The student realizes
Not
that the
anymore,
animal
at
sacrifices
least.
are those
Oh,
of the
just
celestial
peek your
zodiac,
head up,
and that
you
when the ram
damn
or the bull was
cowards.
offered
To
upon
heck
the
with
altar,
that.
it represented the qualities
I'm
in
too
man
pretty
which
to
come
go
through
out like
Aries,
this.
the celestial ram, and Taurus, the bull in the zodiac. In other words, the initiate, passing through his tests and
So you
purification,
wanna
is
talk
offering
this
upon
out
the altar
like
of his
civilized
empire
folk?
being the lower animal
Or are you
instincts
just gonna-
and desires
is it
within
over?
himself. Among the Masonic brothers we
Well,
also find what is
there
called a
goes.
symbol of mortality. It is a
Oh, you
spade,
know,
a coffin,
seemed
and an
quite
open
the
grave,
performance
while
from
upon
where
the
I
coffin
was
has been laid a
standing.
sprig of
Are you
acacia or
fucking
evergreen.
high or
In the
something?
picture we see the spade of the grave digger,
Why am I
which has been
asking?
considered
Of
the symbol of
course
death for
you
centuries.
are.
In the
Was
Book of
still
Thoth,
winning the
that
fights,
strange document
wasn't
which has
I?
descended to
You're
man at
strung
his
out
present
and
stage of
getting
evolution
sloppy,
as a deck
is
of
what
playing
you are.
cards. We find
Course,
a
I
very wonderful
suppose you ain't
symbolism.
gotta worry about
Of all
that
the suits of
now.
cards,
Seems
that of the
this
spade is
one
the
just
only
put us
suit
out
in
of
which all the
business.
court cards face
I'm
away
not
from
sure
the
if
pit.
I should
In
kiss
all the
you
other kings
or
and
have my
queens,
little
the faces
birdie
are looking
feed
at the
you
little
your
marker
own
in the corner of the
entrance.
card.
I told you
But in
to
the spade
quit
suit,
calling me
they
that.
look away from it. Now it is said that the spade has been taken from the acorn, but the occult student has a different idea. He sees in the spade, which has for ages been the symbol of death, a certain part of his own anatomy. If you will again turn to the picture of the spade, you will see, if you
I
have ever
saved your
studied anatomy,
lives.
that the grave digger's
should
spade
be
is the spinal
grateful.
column, and the
Grateful?
spade-shaped piece,
For
which is
killing
used
our
on
meal
the deck of
ticket.
cards, is nothing more
Excuse
nor
me
less than
if
the
I don't
sacred
rush
bone.
to
This bone
embrace our
forms the base of the
savior.
spinal column,
They weren't
and is
the
also the spear of
friendliest
the passion.
bunch, but keeping
Through
those
and the
idiots
Paramana which pierce
entertained
it, past the roots of
at
the
least
spinal
kept
nerve,
the lights
which
on.
indeed are the
To
roots
hell
of the
with
tree of
them.
life. It
Moral
is the center
come.
through which are nourished
Just need a
and fed the
quick
lower
breather and
vertebrae
I'm
of the
ready to
spine,
go.
and the
A
sacral and
breather?
coccygeal bones
What?
that dig the graves for all
So
created
you can
things.
slam more of that
This point has
junk
been
into
beautifully
your arm
symbolized
now.
by the
Now,
grave
you
digger's
know
spade,
what?
which has been used by
I
the
think
brothers
this
of
was
many
a
mystic
blessing in
organizations for
disguise.
ages.
You
The
caught
currents
the
and
end of
forces
that
working
bout.
through these lower
What you
spinal
think of
nerves
Kate's
must
work?
be transmuted and lifted upward to feed the altar fire of the positive or upper end of the spine. The centering of thought or emotion upon higher or lower things, as the case may be, determines where thin life energy will be expended.
I've seen better.
If the lower emotions predominate,
Like
the
hell
flame
you
upon the
have.
altar burns
And
low
while
and
she's
flickers
still
out,
armed
because
and
the
within
forces which
closing
feed it have been
distance?
concentrated upon the
You
lower
are a
centers.
brave one,
But when
aren't you?
altruism
So
predominates,
here's my
then the lower
predicament.
forces are raised upward and
I
pass
suddenly
through the
got no
purification which makes
audience.
possible
No
their being
audience
used as
means
fuel
I
for
got
the
no
ever-burning
caps
lamp.
coming in.
Thus we see why
And
it was
if
a
you
great
ain't
sin to
bringing
let the
in
lamp go
caps,
out,
little
for the
bird,
pillar of flames which hovers over the tabernacle,
you ain't an asset.
purified and prepared
You're a
after the directions of the
liability
Most High,
to me
is the spiritual flame that,
and
hovering
to
above man,
yourself.
lights his way
So,
wherever he may go. The sun of our solar system,
Here's
that
what I'm
is,
thinking.
the spiritual sun
What
behind
say
the physical
I let
globe,
you
is one of these
take
flames.
over her
It began no
contract?
greater than ours, and
She
through the
goes
power
with
of
you,
attraction and the
watches
transmuting
your
of its
back.
ever-increasing energies,
Look, you'd
it
be
has
doing
reached
me
its
a
present
favor while I
proportions.
try to get the
This
place
flame
back
in
in
man
order.
is the light that
What do you
shineth in
say?
darkness.
Me?
It is the spiritual flame
And
within
him?
himself. It lights his way as no exterior light can. This radiating out from him brings into view, one by
I'd
one,
like to know
the
what
hidden
Kate
things of
thinks.
24,
Don't
the
I get a
cosmos,
say in
and
all
his
this?
ignorance is
That
dispelled
ain't
in
how a
exactly the same
contract
proportion
works.
as his light is
Besides,
spread.
you
For
really
the
wanna
darkness of the
stay
unknown
here?
can only be removed by
No
light,
audience,
and the greater the light,
no
the further back
caps,
the darkness is
no
driven.
one to talk
This is the
to
lamp of the
but
philosopher,
yours
which he
truly.
carries through the dark
Jesus.
passageways of
Point
life,
taken.
and by the light of which he
Atta girl.
walks among the stones,
So,
and along the
she's
narrow
on
cliff edge
board.
without fear.
Now what
But although
about
he
you?
gain all other things, and have not this light within himself, he cannot know where he goes.
Sure.
He cannot watch his
I could use
footsteps,
someone
and he
watching
cannot
my
dispel
back.
his ignorance with
Good.
the light of truth.
It's
Therefore, let
settled
each
then.
student watch
And
the
here,
fire that burns
take
upon
this.
his altar.
It's
Let
the
him
purse
also
from
make
the
the
last
altar,
fight.
his body, as beautiful and harmonious as
Exterminator's
possible.
fee.
Now just
and let
wait
him
a
also
second.
sacrifice upon that altar
What
the frankincense
exactly
and
you gonna
myrrh,
do
his
without me
actions
here?
and his deeds.
You don't need to
As in
worry
the
about
tabernacle
me.
he offers all upon the altar
I'll
of
get this
divinity,
place set
so
up
let him
right.
day by day dispel the
Maybe
symbols of
find a
mortality,
less
the coughing,
blood-soaked
and the open grave by
clientele.
which he prepared himself through the mastery of the
Now
lower
get the hell
emotions
outta
within
here.
himself and
You
recognized
ain't
that no matter how
welcome
crystallized
anymore,
or dead his
little
life may
bird.
be,
You're a
the
real
fact that he
son of a
exists at
bitch.
all proves
You
that
know
the
that,
sprig of
Tommy?
acacia,
You
the
don't
promise
have
of
to
life
tell
and
me.
immortality,
I guess
is somewhere
you just
within
come
himself,
find me then
and
when
although
you
the
want to
flame of
head
life may
out.
appear faint or cold, if he will supply the fuel by his daily actions, he will kindle the altar flame once more within himself, which, shining forth, will also help his brother to kindle this flame, which is a living sacrifice to the living God. 25, Chapter 2, the sacred city of Shambhala. In every mythology and legendary religion of the world there is one spot that is sacred above all others to the great ideal of that religion. To the Norsemen it was Valhalla, the city of the slain, built of the spears of heroes, where feasting and warfare was the order of the day. Here the heroes fought all day and reveled by night. Every day they killed the wild boar and feasted on it, and the next day it came to life again. In the Northland they tell that Valhalla was high on the top of the mountains, and that it was connected to the earth below by Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, that up and down this bridge the gods came, and Odin, the Allfather, came down from Asgard, the city of the gods, and worked and labored with mankind. Among the Greeks, Mount Olympus was held sacred, and here the gods are said to have lived high on the top of a mountain. The Knights of the Grail are said to have had their castle among the crags and peaks of 26, northern Spain on Mount Salvat. In every religion of the world there is a sacred spot, Meru of the Oriental, and Mount Moriah and Mount Sinai, upon which the tablets of law were given to man. All those are symbols of one universal ideal, and as each of these religions claimed among the clouds a castle and a home, so it is said that all the religions of the world have their headquarters in Shambhala, the sacred city in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia. Among the Oriental peoples there are wonderful legends of this sacred city, where it is said the Great White Lodge or Brotherhood meets to carry on the governing of world affairs. As the Asas of Scandinavia were 12 in number, as Olympus had 12 gods, so the Great White Brotherhood is said to have 12 members, which meet in Shambhala and direct the affairs of men. It is said that this center of universal religion descended upon the earth when the polar cap, which was the first part of the earth to crystallize, became solid enough to support life. Science now knows that not only does the earth have two motions, that of rotation upon its axis and revolution around the sun, but that it has 9 other motions, according to Flammarion, the French astronomer. One of these motions is that of the alternation of the poles. In other words, someday that part of the Earth's surface, which is now the North Pole, will become the South Pole. Therefore it is said that the sacred city has left its central position, and after much wandering is now located in Mongolia. 27. Those who are acquainted with the Mohammedan religion will see something of great interest in the pilgrimage to the Kaaba at Mecca, where thousands go each year to give honor to the stone of Abraham, the great aerolite, upon which Muhammad is said to have rested his foot. Old and young alike, some even carry it, through desert sands and endure untold hardships, many coming from great distances to visit the place they cherish and love. In India, there are many sacred places to which pilgrims go, few say there is anything more than an outward symbol, but the true spirit represents the spiritual consciousness in man is a pilgrimage in the world. As this consciousness passes upward through the central layers of the body, it is like a pilgrim climbing the heights of Sinai, or the mighty spirit of the Maya. When the spinal fire of man starts upward in its wanderings, it stops at many shrines and visits many religions. The spinal fire is the center of the seed ground of many religions. It worships at the shrine of many divine essences. There is a tiny one upward, and finally it reaches the great desert. Only after pain and suffering and long labor does it cross the waste of sand. This is the Gethsemane of the higher man, but finally he crosses the sacred desert, and before him in the heart of the lotus rises the golden city, Shambhala. In the swollen dormitory the eyes called the Sinai is the seat of the divine union. There, in a peculiar gaseous material, floats, all life exists, that is, divine essence which we know as the spirit. This is the lost city of the sacred Egypt, connected to the lower world by the rainbow bridge, or the silver bridge, and it is to this point in himself that this agent is striving to rise. This is the sacred pilgrimage of the soul, in which the individual lives in one life and finds outward the higher man, the brain. This is the great pilgrimage to Shambhala, and as that great city is the center of the direction of our earth, so the corresponding great city in man is the center of his governmental system. When any other thing governs man, he is not attuned to his own higher self, and it is only when the gods, representing the higher principles, come down the rainbow bridge and live with him, teaching him the arts and sciences, that he is truly receiving his divine birthright. In the Orient, Shishtof looks forward with eager longing to the time when he shall be allowed to worship before the gates of the sacred city, when he also shall see the initiates and silent conqueror around the circular table of the zones, when the veil of Isis shall be torn away, and the Kabbalistic and blood. Let the student remember that all of these things must first happen before the second shall be confined to the universe within. The 12 elder brothers within himself must first be reached and understood before those of the universe can be comprehended. If he would find the great initiates without, he must first find them within, and if he would see that sacred city in the lotus blossom, he must first open that lotus within himself, which he does, petal by petal, when he purifies and attunes himself by the principles within. The lotus is the spinal column of smoke, its roots, deep in materiality, its blossom, the brain, and only when he sends outward the nourishment of power, can that lotus blossom within himself blossom forth, with its many petals, giving out their spiritual fragrance. Sometimes you will see installed windows funny little Chinese gods or Oriental Buddhas sitting on the blossom 32 of the lotus. In fact, if you look carefully, you will find a real glow to the Oriental gods also. This means that they have opened within themselves that spiritual consciousness which they call the Shashuma. You have seen the funny little hats worn by the Hindu gods. They are made to represent a flower upside down, and once more, like the rod of Aaron that budded, we see the reference made to the unfolding of consciousness within. When the lotus blossom has reached maturity, it drops its seed, and from this seed new plants are produced. It is the same within the spiritual consciousness, which, when the plant is finished and its work is done, is released to work and produce other things. In the Western world, the lotus has been changed to the rose. The roses of the Rosicrucian, the roses of the Masonic degrees, and also those of the Order of the Garter in England, all stand for the same thing, the awakening of consciousness and the unfolding into full bloom of the soul qualities of man. When man awakens and opens this plant within himself, he finds, like the gold pollen in a flower, this wonderful spiritual city, Shambhala, in the heart of the lotus. When this pilgrimage of his spiritual fire is accomplished, he is liberated from the top of the mountain, as in the ascension of Christ, and the spiritual man, freed by his pilgrimage from the wheel of bondage, rises upward from among his disciples, the convolutions of the brain, with the great cry of the initiate, which is sounded through the mystical schools for ages when the purified 33 student goes onward and upward to become a pillar in the temple of his God. With that last cry, the true mystery of Shambhala, the sacred city, is understood, and he joins the ranks of those who in white robes of purity, beds and soul bodies, gaze down upon the world and see Christ liberated in the same way. And he also by the light of his little lamp he reads slowly, and with difficulty explaining symbols on the pages before 36. His mind is centered upon one thing, and that is the finding of the philosopher's stone. With all the chemicals at his command, their various combinations thoroughly understood, he is laboring with his furnace, and his burners to make of the base metals the philosopher's gold. At last he finds the key, and gives to the world the secret of the philosopher's gold, and the immortal stone. Salt, sulfur, and mercury are the answer to his problem. From them he makes the philosopher's stone, from them he extracts the elixir of life. With the power that they give him he transmutes the base metals into gold. The world laughs at him, but he goes on in silence, really doing the things the world believes impossible. After many years of labor he takes his little lamp, and silently slips away into the great unknown. No one knows what he has done, or the discoveries that he has made, but he, with his little lamp, still explores the mysteries of the universe. As the close of the 15th century clouded him with mystery, so the dawn of the 20th century is crowning him with the glory of his just reward, for the world is beginning to realize the truths he knew, and to marvel at the understanding which his years of labor had earned for him. Man has been an alchemist from the time when he first raised himself, and with the powers long latent pronounced himself as human. Experiences are the chemicals of life which the philosopher is experimenting 37 with. Nature is the great book whose secrets he seeks to understand through her own wondrous symbolism. His own spiritual flame is the lamp by which he reads, and without this the printed pages mean nothing to him. His own body is the furnace in which he prepares the philosopher's stone, his senses and organs are the test tubes, and incentive is the flame from the burner. Salt, sulfur, and mercury are the chemicals of his craft. According to the ancient philosophers, salt was of the earth earthy, sulfur was a fire which was spirit, while mercury was nothing, only a messenger like the winged Hermes of the Greeks. His color is purple, which is the blending of the red and the blue of the spirit, and the red of the body. The alchemist realizes that he himself is the philosopher's stone, and that this stone is made diamond-like when the salt and the sulfur, or the spirit and the body, are united through mercury, the link of mind. Man is the incarnated principle of mind, as the animal is of emotion. He stands with one foot on the heavens, and the other on the earth. His higher being is lifted to the celestial spheres, but the lower man ties him to matter. Now the philosopher, building his sacred stone, is doing so by harmonizing his spirit and his body. The result is the philosopher's stone. The hard knocks of life chip it away and facet it until it reflects lights from a million different angles. 39. The elixir of life is once again the spirit fire, or rather the fuel which nourishes that fire, and the turning of the base metal into gold is accomplished when he transmutes the lower man into spiritual gold. This he does by study and love. Thus he is building within himself the most panacea for the world's woe. The turning of the base metal into gold can be called a literal fact, as the same chemical combination which spiritually produces gold will also do this physically. It is a known fact that many of the ancient alchemists really did create the precious metal out of lead, alloy, etc., but it was upon the principle that all things contain some part of everything else. In other words, every grain of sand or drop of water has in some proportion every element of the universe therein. Therefore the alchemist did not try to make something from nothing, but rather to extract and build that which already was, and this the student knows is the only possible course of procedure. Man can create nothing from nothing, but he does contain within, in potential energy, all things, and like the alchemist with his metals, he is simply working with that which he already has. The living philosopher's stone is a very beautiful thing. Indeed, like the fire opal, it shines with a million different lights, changing with the mood of the wearer. The transmuting process, whereby the spiritual fire passing through the furnace of purification radiates from the body, as the soul body of gold and blue, is a very beautiful one. The Masons have among their symbols that of a 5-pointed star with 2 clasped hands within it, and in that we have the mystery of the philosopher's stone. The clasped hands represent the united man in which the higher and the lower are working for their mutual betterment, by a cooperative rather than a competitive system. The 5-pointed star is the soul body, born of this cooperation. It is the living philosopher's stone, more precious than all the jewels of earth. From it pour the rivers of life spoken of in the Bible. It is the star of the morning that heralds the dawn of mastery, and is the reward that comes to those who follow in the footsteps of the ancient alchemist. It is well for the student to realize that the alchemy of life produces in natural sequence all of the states of progression which are explained in the writings of the alchemist, until finally the sun and the moon are united as described in the hermetic marriage, which is, in truth, the marriage of the body and the spirit for the mutual development of each other. We are the alchemists who centuries ago carried on in secret our studies of the soul, and we still have the same opportunity that we had then, even more than then, for now we can state our opinions with little danger of personal injury. The modern alchemist thus has an opportunity that his ancient brother never had. On a busy street corner he daily sees nature's experiments carried on. He sees the mixing of metals, and from the everyday book of life, through the power of analogy, he may study divinity. Through experience and often suffering, the steel of his spirit is tempered by the flame of life. As the moon in the zodiac touches off like a fuse the happenings of life, so his own desires and wishes touch off the powers of his soul, and the experiences may be transmuted into soul qualities when he has developed the eye which enables him to read the simplest of all books, everyday life. The alchemist of today is not hidden in caves and cellars, studying alone, but as he goes on with his work, it is seen that walls are built around him, and while he is in the world, like the master of old, he is not of it. As he goes further in his work, the light of other people's advice and outside help grows weaker and weaker, until finally he stands alone in darkness, and then comes the time that he must use his own lamp, and the various experiments which he has carried on must be his guide. He must take the elixir of life, which he has developed, and with it fill the lamp of his spiritual consciousness, and holding that above his head, walk into the great unknown, where if he has been a good and faithful servant, he will learn of the alchemy of divinity. Where now test tubes and bottles are his implements, then worlds and globes he will study, and as a silent watcher will learn from that divine one, who is the great alchemist of all the universe, the greatest alchemy of all, the creation of life, the maintenance of form, and the building of worlds. Chapter 4. The Egyptian Initiate. Many ages have elapsed since the Egyptian priest-king passed through the Pillars of Thebes. Ages before the sinking of Atlantis, thousands of years before the Christian era, Egypt was a land of great truths. The hand of the Great White Brotherhood was held out to the empire of the Nile, and the ancient pyramid passages resounded with the chants of the initiates. It was then that the pharaoh, now called half-human, half-divine, reigned in ancient Egypt. Pharaoh is the Egyptian word for king. Many of the later pharaohs were degenerate and of little account. It is only the early pharaohs we now list among the priest kings. Try to picture for a moment the great hall of Luxor, its inscriptive columns holding up domes of solid granite, each column carved with the histories of the gods. There at the upper end of the chamber sat the pharaoh of the Nile in his robes of state, around him his counselors, chief among them the priest of the temple. An imposing spectacle it was, the gigantic frame of the later Atlantean, robed in gold and priceless jewels, on his head the crown of the north and south, the double empire of the ancient, on his forehead the coiled serpent of the initiate, the serpent which was raised in the wilderness that all who looked upon it might live, that sleeping serpent power in man, which coiled head downward around the tree of life, drove him from the garden of the Lord, but which raised upon the cross, became the symbol of the Christ. The pharaoh was an initiate of Scorpio, and the serpent is the transmuted Scorpio energy, which working upward in the regenerated individual is called the Kundalini. This serpent was the sign of initiation. It meant that within him the serpent had been raised, for the true pharaoh was a priest of God, as well as a master of men. There he sat upon the cube-altar throne, indicating his mastery over the four elements of his physical body, a judge of the living and of the dead, who in spite of all his power and glory, having about him the grandeur of the world's greatest empire, still bowed in humble supplication to the will of the gods. In his hands he carries the triple scepter of the Nile, the shepherd's crook, the Anubis-headed staff, and the flail or whip. These were the symbols of his work. They represent the powers which he had mastered. With the whip he had subjugated his physical body, with the shepherd's crook he was the guardian and keeper of his emotional body, with the Anubis-headed staff he was master of his mind and worthy to wield the powers of government over others, because, first of all, he obeyed the laws himself. With all his robes of state and with the scarab upon his breast, and with the all-seeing eye above his throne, there was still nothing as precious or as sacred to the ancient Egyptian priest-king as the triangular girdle or apron, which was the symbol of his initiation. The apron of the ancient Egyptian carried with it the same symbolism as the Masonic apron of today. It symbolized the purification of the bodies, when the seat of the lower emotions, Scorpio, was covered by the white sheepskin of purification. This symbol of his purification was the most precious belonging of the ancient pharaoh, and this plain insignia, worn by many others below him in rank and dignity, but equal to him in spiritual purification, was the most precious of all things to the priest-king. There he sat, written upon him in the words of the initiate, the symbols of his purification and mastery, a wise king of a wise people. And it was through these priest-kings that the divine worked, for they were of the order of Melchizedek. Through them was formed that doctrine which degeneracy has not been able to entirely obliterate, which we know as the divine right of kings divine, because through spirituality and growth God was able to manifest through them. They were conscious instruments in the hands of a ready writer, willing and proud to do the work of those with whom true knowledge and truth they had attuned themselves. But the time came, as in all nations, when selfishness and egotism entered the heart of king and people alike, and slowly the hand from the great white brotherhood that fed ancient Egypt was withdrawn, and the powers of darkness transformed the land of glory into one of ruins, and the names of mighty kings were buried beneath the oblivion of degeneracy. Mighty cataclysms shook the world, and out of the land of darkness the great white brotherhood carried the chosen people into the promised land, Egypt, the land of glory, disintegrated into dust. The great temples of the pharaohs are ruins, and the temples of Isis are but broken heaps of sandstone. But what of the priest-kings who labored there in the days of its glory? They are still with us, for those who were leaders before are leaders now, if they have continued to walk the path. Although his scepter is gone, and his priestly vestments have
You want
molded
my
away,
2 caps?
the priest
We
king
should
still
keep
walks the
moving.
earth with the
Don't want to
dignity
be pinned
and the
down
power
when the
and
raiders come.
simplicity that before made him
You willing
great.
to do some
He
work?
no longer wears the robes of his order. Although he bears no credentials, he is as much a priest king now as then still bears the true insignia of his rank. The coiled serpent has given place to knowledge and love. The hand that bestowed the riches of the past does little acts of kindness now. Although he no longer carries the scepter
Don't
of
take
self-mastery,
offense to Marcy.
still he manifests that mastery in his
She's
daily
working
life.
through the loss in
Although the
her
altar
own
fires
way.
within the temple at Karnak have long been dead, the true fire within himself still burns, and before that he still bows as he bowed in the days of Egypt's 52 glory. Although the priest no longer is his counselor, and the wise ones of his country no longer aid him in governmental problems, still he is never alone, for the priests in white and the counselors in blue still march with him and whisper words of strength when he needs them. Have you seen people that somehow you liked regardless of appearances? Have you seen other charming people whom you hated in spite of their charms? Have you seen learned people who were fools or impressed you as such, or people who knew little and yet you felt were wise? Those are the insignia of rank,
Hey,
which
is
the
there
loss of
something you
title or
need?
position cannot destroy. Kings with or without crowns, they were not puppets.
How are you
dressed in
feeling?
tawdry
I'm glad to
tinsel.
have the chance
And
to
they still are
return the
kings
favor.
and will be to the end of time.
After all the
and
help
they
you
still
gave.
manifest their rank,
Anything
not by
else?
their superiority and their high-headedness, but by the soul
No,
qualities which
nothing.
they radiate
No
from
problem.
themselves. The purity of their lives still radiates outward from those who wore the apron of the initiate, for while the triangular
Seems
apron
to be
with its
growing
signet drawn
well.
upon it has long since rotted away, still the spiritual counterpart of that symbol radiates in their daily lives, proving beyond all dispute that they are priest kings and are today. We find them in every walk of life in high places and down in the mire of life. But wherever we find them, they are still the mouthpieces of the gods, and through them comes the promise to all who strive. They are kings, not of the earth but of heaven, and in the life of our own master we find one, who joined himself to those 53, who served, and was a true king even when his only crown was a wreath of thorns. Still in the pyramid of Giza, the initiations continue, still the initiate receives the insignia of his rank. Before that fire within himself he makes his vows, and upon the burning altar of his own higher being he lays his crown and his scepter, his robes and his diamonds, his hates and his fears, and sanctifies his life as a priest king, and swears to serve none but his own higher self, the God within. His robes are his soul body, and his crown is his life, and in the streets of life he is enthroned.
One day,
The dusky towers and factory chimneys around him fade into the temple pillars of Luxor, and with a lunch pail on his arm, his face brown with honest dirt, he is as much a king as when the crown of the double Nile rested upon his brow, and the priest of the temple made him one with his God and his family. Chapter 5. One of the most interesting symbols that has come down to us from the ancients is that of the ark, or the box that was said to contain the sacred relics. Many people believe that this belongs particularly to the Jewish nation, but this is a great mistake, because it has been the birthright of every country to have the ark. All have, like the Jewish people, lost much of their power and glory when they lost the sacred Arkansas in ancient Chaldea and Phoenicia. The ark was well known.
I've
India
seen
celebrates it as the lotus, and the ancient Egyptians tell how the moon god Osiris was imprisoned in an ark. In all the mystery religions of the world, individually and cosmically, the ark represents the fountainhead of wisdom. Over it the Shekinah's glory hovers, as a column of flames by night and a pillar of smoke by day. Every country has seen and felt its presence when the priest kings and initiates bring out of an old civilization, lost because of crystallization, the sacred ark, and surrounded by those 56, faithful to the truth, carry it into other lands and among other peoples. In every creed and religion we find crystallization. We find small groups of people separating themselves from their brother man. We find those who, clinging to the old, refuse to advance with the new, and whenever we find this crystallization, we find the spirit of truth carried away to other people and embodied in other doctrines. The ancient ark of the Israelite never had removed from it the staves by which it was carried and moved, until finally it was placed in Solomon's temple. Neither does the spirit fire in man rest until finally it is enthroned in the holy place of his solar temple. Ever towards the rising sun its bearers carry this sacred truth. Nations are born of those who love the truth, and are buried when they forget it. The time has come when its silent bearers have taken the sacred ark and the Shekinah's glory, and in solemn file have moved across the waters and brought it to the new world. The call has sounded through the universe, and those who are true to their own higher principles have surrounded the sacred chest. Those who have sworn alliance to their own higher being are following the priests and their sacred burden, and a beautiful mystery temple is being built in this beautiful land of ours, loved and guarded by those who are laboring for humanity. The staves are still in the ark, however, and only when real good can be done by it will it remain. 57. The opportunity is now confronting the Western world. The knowledge of the ancients, the wisdom of the ages is knocking at the door and seeking those who will follow it. The bearers of the ark have stopped and are gathering a nucleus of spiritual souls to carry on their work. And whether or not the word of the Lord will remain with a nation depends upon its own actions, and the actions of a nation are the collective actions of its individuals. If it finds nothing here attuned to itself, if it finds few that will answer to its call, the call of service and brotherhood, then will its priests lift again the staves and the sacred work will go out into other lands. The life of a country thus gone, like the ancient city of the Golden Gate, it will be swallowed up in oblivion. The call is sounding, and those who love the truth and think and care for the light must join that band of servers who have for centuries dedicated themselves to the preservation of truth. Their lives they have given 1,000 times, their happiness has been second to their duty. They are the keepers of the sacred word, and the law of attraction draws to them all who love and live the truth. A great influx of spiritual light comes to those who live the life and have learned the doctrine, and regardless of clan or country they have joined the silent file of watchers and workers around the sacred ark of the covenant. Every individual by his daily actions is expressing more plainly than by words his ideals, his desires, and his attitude towards this great work. The composite attitude of a certain number of people either shuts out or lets in the light. Therefore every individual has a great duty, a great work has to be done, and to that the true student must dedicate his life. Then wherever he may go, whatever he may do, he is being led, and the Shekinah's glory directs his footsteps. In the brain of man, between the wings of the kneeling cherubim, is the mercy seat, and then man speaks with his God as the priest of the tabernacle spoke to the spirit of the Lord hovering between the wings of the angels. Man is again the ark, and within it are the three principles, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the tablets of the law, the pot of manna, the rod that budded. But as in the case of the ancient Israelites, when they became crystallized, the pot of manna and the rod that budded were removed from the ark, and all that was left were the tablets or the letters of the law. When the individual crystallizes and excludes various sidelights from his mother, he excludes the life force that is dwelt in him. In civilized stages, he shuts out his own life, and all that he is left are the tablets of the law, the material units on which the spiritual life is built. Solomon's temple, or the perfected temple of the human body, the perfected temple of the universe, and the perfected temple of the soul, finally forms the temple of Christ, and Arkansas bear the head of the great cross of the cross, and their lives becomes permanent. The staves of polarity upon which it was carried are removed, and it becomes a living 60 thing, found in place where man converses with his God. Then man, the purified priest, carrying the robes of his daughter, the garments of his soul, converses with the spirit God of the mercy seat. This ark within is always present, but man can only reach it after he has passed through the outer court of the tabernacle, after he has passed through all the degrees of initiation, and after he has taken the third degree and becomes a grand master. Then and then only can he enter into the presence of his Lord, and there in the open chamber, lighted by the jewels of his own breastplate, he converses with the Most High, the true spiritual essence within himself. We are working towards this, and the time will come when each person for himself will know the mystery of the ark, when the student through purification shall be led through the door of the Holy of Holies, and will be enveloped by the light of truth. This was his birthright which he served for Nisa cottage. To this end came he into the world that he might bear witness to this truth, that through this light all men might be saved. The ark, that great spiritual principle, surrounded by its loving workers, is falling all asunder. When true materiality and degeneracy of great people are destroyed or accompanied beneath the earth, then those on a true accord around the ark, and as its faithful servants are led out to the destinies of the new world. And set forth the same thing. The student will find that it is true. When he allies himself with the powers of light, when he becomes a channel for its expression, and when he radiates from himself to all who need it, then indeed with a love to heaven, he shall become son of God. Knights of the Holy Grail, before starting to take up the study of the Grail legend, it will be well for all who are interested to read those tales that are now listed under the heading of Children's Tales Stories. For example, the story of good King Arthur and his round table is a cosmic myth, and while there is little doubt that he is a man also, the real mystery, as in the story of the Christ, is not the literal tale, but the great mystic or occult truth that is concealed under allegory and parable. It is the same with the story of Parsifal, which can never be really understood and appreciated until the student sees in the ninth and later king of the sacred cup his own spiritual development and the temptation he must also master to become the king of the world. 64. In Lohengrin also the same truth is shown to the world. It is the path of initiation along which each must pass on his road to self-mastery. To every nation and in every tongue sacred legends have been given to teach man the path he must follow. The blind Homer of the Greeks, who told of the wanderings of Ulysses, gave the same great truths to the world. The schools of ancient Norway and Sweden, and the prophets of the Jews used the same means, and everywhere from the sacred books of the East to the legends of the American Indians, we find one great connected truth told to many different people in ways that were best suited for their development. Such a truth is the legend of the Round Table, given to King Arthur. All true students know what wedding bells are. Nevertheless, the wedding of the sword when the spirit and the body are united eternally, each swearing to honor and protect each other. The marriage of the first of all consider the coming of Arthur the king. We find in the legend of Arthur that Merlin was the wise man who was said had charge of the coming king during his youth. Merlin represents the band of united brothers, who realizing that a great evil would come into the world, had consecrated themselves to the work of preparing for his mission. 67. It was under the direction of Merlin, and after Merlin, that the anvil and stone that the sword thrust into were raised in the square of the city of where new kings were born. It was also who told the brave knights of the country, and told them that the one who could draw forth the sword would be killed by the enemy. And of all the knights of the after the battle of war was the only one who could use the sword. There was a very wonderful mystery that the sword contained within that divine allegory. Let us read the letters that were engraved upon the sword. WHO so pull it out this sword of this stone and anvil is right wise king born of England. The chief stone is the body, it has been so symbolized for centuries, and today among the masons the usher is the symbol of man. Experience is the anvil, and it is upon this anvil that the sword is tempered. The sword is spirit, the true spiritual sense of the word is divine power, by freeing the sword of spirit from the casings of the lower man and the world. It is the same symbol as that later used by Galahad, the guileless knight, the personification of the purified man, who comes without his sword, but he later arms himself with the sword of spirit and his glory from the keeper of the floating down the river of life, past Camelot. Sir Galahad had the strength of 10 because his heart was pure, and the knight of today must follow in the same path. 68. If you have read the story of King Arthur, you will remember how he was given Excalibur, the enchanted sword, how it came up out of the water held by a hand draped in white. Excalibur represents light and truth, which is the weapon of the true initiate. The still hangs on the corner of all the round table of King Arthur. In the very center of the table is a beautiful rose painted in natural color. This symbol is that of the Rosicrucians, the ancient alchemists, the legend of the British King, and the ancient philosophers of fire. Now let us turn our attention for a moment to the history of the Holy Grail, or the cup from which Christ drank at the Last Supper, and which was said to have poured his blood when he was dying upon the cross. Ancient legends tell us that this cup was made from a sacred stone, which had been the crown jewel of Lucifer, the dynamic energy of the universe. It was said that the green stone had been struck from the crown of Lucifer by the archangel Michael during the famous battle in heaven. After the death of Christ, it is said that Joseph of Arimathea took the sacred cup and the spear of the Passion and carried them into a distant land. He wandered with his sacred relics through Europe and is said to have finally died, and those who came after him after many centuries of tribulation carried the sacred relics to Mount Salvat in northern Spain, where they remained until Parsifal finally took the grail and spear back to the east where it is to be now preserved. 70. It is around this cup and spear that the legends of Parsifal and King Arthur have been written, and it is through study of this fact that we are able to better understand the mystery of the Great White Lodge of which the Round Table of Arthur, the circular temple of the Knights of the Grail, is a symbol. Although we no longer have the cup as a physical symbol, it is not gone from among us, and as in the days of all the brave knights of the Round Table, the right. So those knights of today who belong to the Great White Brother, they are found in the name of truth and labor with no right, and seek to right the wrongs of the world. It is said that the Knights of Arthur's court always fought for virtue and purity, and so did those who rode out of Mount Salvat. The Grail Cup is the symbol of the creative force of nature. It is also the symbol of the human race, which is slowly learning the mystery of creation. Within the cup is the blood of Christ, that force which is transmuting the body into soul, fast or slowly as we give it greater or lesser opportunity. In the sacred spear we find symbolized again the creative force, which in the hands of Klingsor, the evil one, wounds and causes suffering, but which when held by the pure Parsifal heals the very wound that it caused. A great lesson is being taught the man through these allegories, but the average person is unwilling to stop 71 and consider them. They do not realize that they themselves are the ones whom the elder brothers of humanity must use in the fight against the forces of evil. They do not realize that the dragons and ogres of the legends are their own lower natures, which they must overcome. They do not see in the hand-to-hand combat of the knights of old for a lady's hand the higher and lower man fighting for the soul within. The knight of today does not realize that the white armor that he wears is his own purified body, which is proof against all the attacks of vice and passion, but nevertheless the legend. His shield is truth, which is a perfect protection of the life. His strong left arm is the knowledge of spiritual spiritual light will be ignorance and the demons of lust. The sacred spear and the cup, which he served are the two poles of the creative life force which developed in the written word of the daily souls for them. Far from the animated of the cold light of sitting around the circular table of the universe watch the knights in their battle of life, and the time comes when the student, having finished his work here, is liberated at the foot of the throne. There the candidate stands robed from head to foot in the armor of spirit, and in the pure white of a body that has been 72 cleansed. Then the
Not
cloth
a
is
great
lifted from the sacred
tactical
cup,
position.
and he is illuminated by the light which would have killed him had he seen it without purification. He then takes his place among the knights of the Round Table, and joins those who give up all and labor for humanity. When in sickness and in suffering we beg of the great unknown that he send us help, then indeed our light comes to us as Lohengrin came to Elsa. When our loved ones pass into the great unknown, there stands the brother of the Grail, the invisible helper, who through days of labor has earned the right to become a member of the great band of servers who gather around the table of the king, and while their bodies are asleep still labor in their great search for light and truth, and pray for the day when they shall also become kings of the Holy Grail. Chapter 7. The Mystery of the Pyramid. There comes a time in the development of the occult student when he understands one of the great secrets of the initiates, and that is that every sacred thing outside of himself stands for some organ or function within himself. This is, of course, true in the case of the Great Pyramid, except that this particular pile of stone, said by many to be the oldest building on the surface of the earth, is the great symbol of composite man. In other words, it stands for man as a unit. Let us first consider it simply from the exterior standpoint. When we first look at it in the distance, it seems to be one great stone, but as we come closer we see that it is made of thousands of smaller stones, each one carefully fitted into place. Here we see the first likeness between the pyramid and man. We consider man to be a unit, but when we examine him closely, we find that he is a great number of small units, each working in harmony with the others. It is the same with everything. We take a successful life, and we think of it as an entirety, but when we examine it, we find that it is a number of small achievements joined together. As thousands of workmen were used in the building of the pyramid, so there are unnumbered workmen at work in the building of our bodies, which are symbolical of the same building. There are many pyramids all over the world. We find them in South America and in Mexico. We find mounds that were made to represent them among the American Indians, and in Europe and Britain we find remnants of the same things. But there is only one real pyramid in all the world. Even the others in Egypt have the copies of the Great Pyramid, and we use its tombs for the pharaohs, but nobody has ever found its blocks, nor were there ever any signs that it had been so used. Now let us continue our journey between the pyramid and man. If you will look at the accompanying illustration, you will see the pyramid laid flat, and you will notice it is made of 4 triangles laid around the base square. The 4-sided base of the pyramid represents the 4 elements of which man bodies are composed. These are hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, or earth, water, fire, and air. These are the base of all things. On this base the 4 bodies of man are raised, the elements are found. Thus the physical body is raised from the earth. The vital body is raised from the water, the emotional body from the fire, and the mental body from the air. There are 12 lines used in the drawing of the 4 triangles, which stand for the 12-fold constitution of man, and it is complete. The 3-fold body, the 3-fold mind, the 3-fold soul, and the 3-fold spirit. It also gives us a 12 spiritual souls, divided into their respective groups. Out on the desert stands the Sphinx, the guardian of the threshold mentioned by Bulwer Lytton. It stands for the bodies of man, and is that strange being which must be passed before the student can go on in his development. The 4 fixed signs of which the Sphinx is a symbol are Taurus the bull, Leo the lion, Scorpio the eagle, and Aquarius the man, or the human head. 78, 79. I have already given you some work on the sacrum bone, and I told you that it was the grave digger's spade. Here is a picture of the head of the Sphinx, and the inverted sacrum bone when it has been turned upward. We see the Sphinx in the inverted sacrum, and also in the inverted Masonic keystone. All this is very interesting, but unless we realize the inner meaning of it, its true value is lost. But it is not chance that these things should be so. You have most of you heard of the dweller on the threshold, that creature built by our own actions and mistakes. Well, out on Egypt's deserted stands and bars the way to the pyramid, the temple of the higher man. And the message that it gives to the world is, I am the bodies. If you would go onto the temple you must master me, for I am within you. The Sphinx again symbolizes man, with the mind and spirit of the human rising out of the animal desires and emotions. It is the riddle of the ages, and man is once more the answer. It is said that in ancient times the Sphinx was the gateway of the pyramid, and that there was an underground passage which led from the Sphinx to Cheops. 80. This would make the symbolism even more perfect, for the gateway to the spirit is through the bodies according to the ancients. Let us now enter the pyramid, and passing through the corridors come to the king's chamber as it is called. There are 3 great rooms in the pyramid which are of great interest to the student. The highest is the king's chamber, then below that is the queen's chamber, and down below the surface of the earth is the pit. Here we again find the great correlation between the pyramid and man. The 3 rooms are the 3 great divisions in man which are the seats of the threefold spirit. The lower room is the generative system under the control of Jehovah. The center room or queen's chamber is the heart, under the control of the Christ, and the upper room or the king's chamber is the brain, which is under the control of the Father. In this upper room is the coffer made of stone, the meaning of which has never been explained, but which the student recognizes as the 3rd ventricle in the brain. It is quite certain also that this coffer was used as a tomb during initiation, when as is the case in the Masonic initiations of today, which are the remnants of the ancient mysteries, the candidate was buried in the earth and resurrected, a symbol of the death of the lower man and the liberation of the higher. It is said that Moses was initiated in the Great Pyramid, and some also say that Jesus was instructed there also. Be that as it may, we know that for thousands 81 of years since the time it was built by the Atlanteans, it has been the greatest temple of initiation in the world. It seems also that its work is not yet done, for mutely it is teaching those who will see the mysteries of creation. It is said by many that it is the original Solomon's temple, but this we know is not true, for while it may be the first and original material temple, the true temple of Solomon is the universe, the Solomon's temple, which is slowly being rebuilt in man as the temple of the soul of man. There is probably no point that is as important in connection with the pyramid as that of the cornerstone. On the very top of the Great Pyramid is a comparatively flat place about 30 feet square. In other words, the true stone, which is the head of all the corners, is missing. If we look at the reverse side of the United States seal, we find again the pyramid from which the top is separated. Omar Khayyam, the Persian poet, gives us the secret of the keystone when he says, "From my base metal shall be filed a key, which shall unlock the door he howls without." The value of the stone is better understood when you understand that it completes all of the triangles at once, and without it none of them are complete. This stone is the spirit in man, which fell from its high position, and has been lost beneath the rubbish of the lower man. This is the true capstone that is now hidden in the pit of man's temple, and which he must exhume and place again as the true crown of his spiritual pyramid. He can only do this when he calls the thousands of workmen within himself together and binds them to the service of the higher man. There must be no traitors to murder the builder this time. And Lucifer, the one rejected by man as the devil, is the one who must through the planet Mars send man the dynamic energy, which man himself must transmute from the fire of passion to the flame of spirit. He then must take the tools of the craft and cut, and polish his own being into the capstone of the universal temple. It is interesting to note how the casing stones that once made the pyramid so beautiful and true were carried away to build the cities nearby. And in connection with that, it is interesting to note how the soul and body of man, the casing stones of his spiritual temple, have been sacrificed in order that he might have material things. As we look at pictures of the ancient pyramid and sphinx, which have stood on Egypt's sands for ages, let us see in them our own mystery temple, made without the sound of hammer or the voice of workmen. And as we sadly think of this mighty ruin, broken by ages of neglect, let us remember our temple, and that its cornerstone is missing also, and our walls are falling with neglect. Let us learn the lesson which it teaches. 84. Hasten to perfect our pyramid, cap it with the stone of spirit, offer upon its altars our sacrifice to the great sun spirit, and bury our lower nature in its heart. And the sealed lips of the books give up their secret. End with Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Paul. End with audiobook. If you like this audiobook, check out the other audiobooks with African Words Literature on my channel.
A study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece by 3 initiates, narrated by Matthew Schmitz. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Introduction. We take great